Hey, happy week 127. We are here again. Ara Memorian here, founder and managing partner at the Spring Team Real Estate. And this is 127 weeks in a row since March of 2020 when COVID ravaged our lives. I've been tracking this market every single week for 127 weeks in a row. And the one thing that you will never find here on this channel is broad data. I will never just talk about the 416, the 905, the GTA. All of the information that you're going to get in this YouTube channel, specifically on the weekly market reports, is very specific to the neighborhoods in which we work. We're going to be expanding this report into the Durham region in the coming weeks. So if you are a Durham region buyer or seller, stay tuned for that. But for now, we are talking all about week 127, which was probably the least active week in my entire real estate career. There was 1 week in Toronto real estate, specifically urban Toronto real estate, that had fewer house sales than this past week, and that was the 6th week of COVID. Back in, I guess, 6 weeks after March 2020, so sometimes in early July of 2020, when we only had 15 sales to report. This week we have 17, so 2 more than the all-time low in terms of number of freehold sales. The one thing I wanted to talk about today, well, a number of things I wanted to talk about today. The one thing, if you are a Spring Team client, make sure you check your email. We've invited you to an exclusive Facebook group where we're going to be offering all sorts of freebies throughout the year, from lawn care to maintenance and all sorts of things you might need around your house or your condo. We have an event coming up for our clients, the Leslieville Beer Fest, happening August the 27th from 1 to 8 p.m. We're closing down Dundas between Carlaw and Logan. 20 breweries are coming. A whole bunch of food vendors are coming. There's going to be music. There's going to be stuff for kids, stuff for pets. It's going to be a pretty awesome event. Our clients get in for free. But if you happen to be watching this, I'm going to put a link below in the comments or in the description that will have a $10 off discount code to the Leslieville Beer Fest happening on August 27th. And we happen to be, Spring Team is the lead sponsor of this event and has been since its inception in 2016. After a 3-year hiatus, we are finally back. So let's talk about the market real quick. I'm going to make this video somewhat shorter this week. So let's dig right into it. So the big headline for me was: a detached house near Subway sells for $515,000. Now, when does that ever happen? Never. Here's the house that we're talking about. Right here. Can y'all see that? Let me make sure I move my screen out of the way here so you can see what we are talking about here. So this is the house, 24 Dentonia Park South. This is at Victoria Park and Danforth. You can see the map right here. Let's zoom out on that map a little bit if possible. There we go. It's up here. Just kind of show you what we're talking about here. Things are a little bit slow when I run this video app here. I'm not quite sure why, but it is what it is. So we got Dentonia Park Avenue in Crescent Town near the Victoria Park subway station. Well, somewhat close to the Victoria Park subway station. Anyway, so it's an area that might have previously been overlooked, but has been doing quite well over the past couple of years as the surrounding communities got so expensive. People started to look to neighborhoods around Dawes Road, around Victoria Park and Danforth, around Main Street. Dentonia Park is actually a pretty awesome park. You've got lots of greenery around this neighborhood. You have easy access to transit. You've got the subway station right here. Like, it's a great neighborhood. Overall, it's increasing in value year over year over year over year. So the reason I'm highlighting this particular property, it's not because I wanted to show you what's available to most people in the market. I wanted to show you an anomaly in case you see this somewhere else and somebody trying to tell you this is an indicator of where the market's headed. Look, we get a detached house for 515 grand. You should be able to do the same everywhere else. This is not true. What's very important to understand is this was a bit of a forced sale situation. It's a property that was being sold under power of sale, which doesn't happen too often. Like, listen, whether it's a bank sale, a power of sale, or a foreclosure, all of these properties have to go to market and be open to the market, whatever the market is willing to pay for it. So I reached out to the listing agent of this property just to see if there's anything that's specifically wrong with it that kept the value down. It's a repossessed property that looks like it's in somewhat rough shape, but for 515 grand, I'll take this all day long, no matter what's wrong with it. So This is an exceptional deal. There are other deals, maybe not quite as good as this one, available in the marketplace, but even at this price, it still took 7 days to go down. So it wasn't. There must be something beyond what we're seeing here that made that resulted in this property selling for $515,000. So, kind of moving on from that particular property and just talking more about what the market is doing in general here. Whoop, I keep doing that. So like I said, we had during the first few weeks of COVID back in 2020, there were only 15 sales, and we're talking about houses specifically. This past week, we had only 17 houses trade when we normally have about 60 to 100 transactions. So around this time of year, it is the summertime, but normally we do have much more sales activity than this. So that could be a bit of a concern for some people that are thinking about getting their property ready to go to market. My message to you would be don't. Right now, there's very little buyer activity right now. There's a lot of buyers on the sidelines. A lot of buyers have been taken out of the market. So a lot of sellers are doing the smart thing and not going to market. Now, a message for you if you happen to be on the market right now. If you actually get a firm offer for your property that is somewhat close to what you need to get out of that property, and remember, only if you need to, then I would go ahead and take that offer, because there's a very good chance that that's going to be the best thing you're going to get for a little while. Everybody else who doesn't need to sell right now is doing the smart thing, and they are coming off the market. And as we can see, again, we had another pullback in the number of available listings to 503. Remember, we peaked out at 625 active listings in the urban markets. And by urban markets, in case you're unfamiliar, from the first video, we're talking from the Victoria Park, Toronto, Scarborough border down to the Etobicoke, Toronto border, Danforth, Bloor, and then south to the lake. That's a pretty huge area, and we only have 503 sales here. Last year at this time, we had about 120 fewer units on the market, but this is coming down from a run-up of previous panicked sellers who some sold, some didn't. But again, considering we have like 100%, or not 100%, but a dramatic drop in the number of sales we normally have at this time of year, to not have listings continue to pile on because of that is a really positive sign. And it's at the end of the month, so we can run our months of inventory figures. And months of inventory specifically is how long would it take for the existing supply of 503 units to sell at the current rate of sales. It would take 1.57 months. What's considered a seller's market is under 2 months of inventory. The closer we get to 1, the more aggressive a seller's market it becomes. But because we have so few buyers in the market right now, like we've said over and over again, we don't have a supply problem. We have a buyer demand problem where buyers are just nowhere to be seen right now. And the only place they're being seen is actually in the rental market. So again, for condos, we've pulled back from almost 2,000 units available for sale 6 weeks ago down to 1,634, 6 weeks in a row of declining inventory in condo land without much damage to any sort of pricing. We've had some fluctuations here, but that's because a lot of the higher end stuff is simply not on the market right now. And to have 60 firm sales is not that strong, where we're normally sitting at around 170 to 220. But we haven't seen those kinds of numbers since the third quarter of last year. So because there has been so little available on the market in the first quarter of this year, we've had sales pull back as well. But the sales did not recover when the market kind of turned. So sales are still relatively low for condos, but way better than for houses, even proportionately when you average, compare it to the number of listings that are available. And again, another community where months of inventory is down from 2.16 months last month to 2. And we should probably see this come to under 2 months next month when I run these numbers in early September. But I say that with a bit of caution because this fall market, I predict, is going to be a stronger market for sellers as buyers slowly start to come back to the market, assuming the Bank of Canada doesn't completely go crazy with their September announcement. So like I said, condos are usually selling as they would during this time of year. getting reasonable prices on most units. So if you are a condo seller, you're going to do better than a house seller right now, which I haven't said those words in a really, really long time. So I've got to give a big shout out to the condo sellers out there who are finally kind of a little bit more excited than house sellers. Listen, I was quoted in the Star a couple of weeks ago, and I'm getting so many hate calls and emails about this. I'm kind of numb to it now. Yes, I was able to increase one unit's rent from $2,500 to $3,500. They rented the place last year in a down rental market, and now the market can support $3,500. So rather than the landlord eat $1,000 every single month, we made the move to increase the rent on the tenants, who luckily were able to absorb that increase, and are now putting $1,000 more in our landlord's pocket, which every landlord should be doing. We're not running charities with our properties here, folks. So again, rent control does apply to your unit if it was occupied for residential purposes prior to November 2018. So if it's a new build condo that was occupied after November 2018, then you can raise the rent as much as you want. But if it's a condo that existed prior to November 2018, then you can only stick to the maximum annual increase, which is 1.2% this year, and it's 2.5% next year. So for those that haven't done the increase yet this year, wait until October, give your N2 notice, and have that increase take effect January 1st. 2.5% is all you can do for some units. So the luxury markets have maintained supply overall. There isn't much activity in this time. Most people in these communities tend to be away for the month of August. We find that cottage country is where everybody is. There isn't too much sales activity, but again, months of inventory is down here as well, from 2.4 months down to 2.04. Condos down to 2.12 from 2.43 in this luxury communities. So again, shows me very confidently that we have strong non-panic selling owners here, which is fantastic. I mean, listen, everybody except for this poor guy that had to sell for $515. Hopefully, the bank got what they needed to get out of it. I'm sure he didn't get what he wanted to get out of it, but it is what it is. Some people are just in over their heads, and fortunately, it's not an en masse situation that's going to affect the market as a whole. But here's the real kind of story of this week is that the Leaside, Davisville, Yonge, and Eglinton area. This neighborhood has historically been one of the most undersupplied communities, but over the past little while, we were creeping towards 50 available listings. But just this week, we had a drop of almost 50% active listings in the Leaside, Davisville, Yonge, and Eglinton area, with a huge 10 sales, considering this neighborhood normally goes through anywhere from like 2 to 6 sales a week, and actually has the lowest months of inventory out of any community in the entire 416, the 905, and surrounding areas. It's the most undersupplied community. And this is a neighborhood, I didn't grow up here, but I went to school here, so I essentially did grow up here. I was one of those Flemington Park kids that was like bussed into Leaside schools with my more well-to-do people. It's where I learned all the opportunities available to people that I wasn't necessarily exposed to where I grew up in Flemington Park. But we've had an extraordinary drop in supply here, which is going to create a bit of an issue for buyers who think they're going to be getting deals, but they're going to be up against some competition in a neighborhood like this in the coming weeks and months. So we're going to keep a close eye on this right here. Condos did also do very well here. Yonge and Eglinton kind of leading the way with the majority of the units available here. We actually have a ton of assignments that we have access to here. Remember, we talked about assignments as being one of the biggest opportunities that exist in the marketplace right now. You could pick up a solid assignment that's very close to occupancy in the Yonge and Eglinton area. And because the rents, the way they are, the rents are doing fantastic. So you're going to be taking that money to the bank every single month. So that's Leaside for you right there. I wouldn't second guess any buying opportunities there. I'd jump on anything that you perceive as any sort of deal. We even had a client this week back away from a purchase more locally and decide to buy something they had privately access to in Yonge and Egg. And we're like, listen, I can't offer you that deal. You go ahead and you take it. And Birchcliff finally has decided to show us that it's a regular community and does increase in listings and doesn't perform as well as everybody else, because Birchcliff has been like the darling of the Scarborough/Toronto real estate market, having usually the least amount of supply, the most amount of demand, but supply is up there now. So there are some decent opportunities available in Birchcliff. We actually know of this 4,000 square foot new build that's coming to market at $3.6 million in a couple of weeks, which would be happy to show you in advance. So reach out if you want some information on that property. And again, the Kingston Road Highland Creek corridor, which we've been looking at, is kind of remaining relatively flat in terms of the number of sales and number of listings. So no real drama to report there. So one thing that's important to look at right now is there's a ton of information out there that seems to be stating that there are, let me get my face back up here for you guys. There's a ton of information out there that seems to be telling you that we're finally below the prices of a year ago. So that's really not the case, because the big problem here is that we just don't have a lot of the larger units coming to market, and larger houses, larger condos. The more expensive stuff just isn't coming to market right now, which is not selling, which is bringing the average price down a little bit. So just don't misconstrue average price as like fact in a lot of cases, because average price can be skewed by big sales on the top end and smaller sales on the lower end. So most properties are not down year over year. Average prices might be in some communities, and especially if you're looking at broad figures like the 416 or the GTA, that's not really going to tell the real story to you who has a house in Leslieville or a house in Roncesvalles or a condo in City Place or a condo in on the Kingston Road corridor. The story is very different for you depending on what type of property you have and where you are. So it's not going to be the same story. So please try and take all that information that say prices are down year over year with a grain of salt, because it may not be the case for you, and it most likely is not. But it's very tough to kind of tell the true story when you're lumping in the entire the entire GTA, and it's really not relevant overall. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. So make sure that you're subscribing, because I'm getting, we're going to put a lot more video content out there with the whole team. I really don't want you guys to miss what we're talking about. And I want you to be the most educated buyers and sellers out there, making sure you're not getting caught by clickbait or unnecessary drama that exists in the marketplace. And remember, this is not 1989. It's not 1990. Okay. Toronto is a very different place today than it was then. Interest rates are going up, and they will continue to go up throughout the rest of this year. But because supply is not piling on, once buyers start to feel more comfortable getting back into the market, we're going to see a very different 2023, mid 2023 onward. So if you have any money sitting on the sidelines right now, I want you to be buying assignments and renting them out for big, big money. And I want you to look in the freehold market, because houses that were trading at 1.8, 1.9 have come back down to earth, and they're trading somewhere in the 1.5s to 1.6s. And most importantly, the biggest opportunity is for first-time buyers or people in that lower price bracket looking for houses. You can finally have a whole bunch of opportunities under $1 million, where that wasn't even a possibility in January, February, March of this year. So opportunity exists. We're not maxing out. Remember, buyers, we're not maxing out on your purchases. You're leaving a bit of a buffer. We're not taking home equity lines and maxing those out as well. So leave some cash behind, leave a bit of a buffer, buy what you can. But if you buy something today, if it works out with your finances and everything else, if there's enough of a buffer there, if you can make that buy today, you're going to be loving that buy in 2 years. So again, we're not day traders. We're not day traders. We're going to be loving that buy in a couple of years. We're not day trading real estate, but we know that the rental market is super hot right now. So investors are hot and heavy buying. And that is all. So thanks for listening, everybody. And I will talk to you guys next week. Don't forget to subscribe and reach out to us on all the socials. Bye.